First story. Am I overreacting to my 49M, Y47F, forming a new friendship with some army guy 29M? My wife wants to leave her job to get into IT. She works as a nurse and I get it. Nurses are underpaid and underappreciated. I also have been nothing but supportive of her. She started taking some online classes with some college and met a guy. Let's just call him TT, as a 29-year-old man who has been in the army for 11 years now. He's boisterous. I sat in for some of her classes and this guy has a lot to say. I have to give it to him. He makes an impact and stands out. I can see why she grew a liking to him. I will even admit I grew a liking to him. She got a lot closer to him, even adding his number to her contacts and texting him. She came to figure out he was fairly local and lived in a base not too far from us. Since I was having a family get-together, she invited him over after I told her I didn't have a problem with it. When T finally got here, he was not what I expected based on his voice. His body type is literally the ideal man. He's chiseled, muscular, masculine, and tall. I have to admit I felt inadequate in his presence. I should mention we have 3 kids together, a 24-year-old daughter, a 22-year-old son, and a 16-year-old son. As he was at this family get-together, T stood out even in person. He made an impression with everyone and was the center of attention, telling the stories of his time in Iraq, Afghanistan, and goddamn Germany, where he took so much time off to see all of Europe, and how he got into trouble when he got arrested in a bar in Italy, which, to be fair, was actually a really funny story. As the day went on, he got handsy with just about everyone. My daughter most of all, but also even me, and my goddamn wife. He really liked touching people. I remember my daughter squealing really happily at him hugging her and my wife smiling at it. I myself was uncomfortable with him hugging me, but he was a lot bigger than me, so I just let it happen out of fear. As the day went on, he talked about his current army career, and how he was planning to be a warrant officer, and he was soon going to become a mister and gonna do great things for this country. I got so bothered by it. When it was all over, I complained to her about it, but she said he was just eccentric and there's nothing to worry about. But had eventually leaving me for this over-the-top 29-year-old man bothers me. Am I overreacting? Am I wrong for it? What do you all think? Update. So on Friday, I made a post about how my wife made a friend in the army, who's a 29-year-old soldier and soon to be a warrant officer. She invited him over to a family get-together and made an impact. I need to admit to a fault on my part, in that I am generally pretty bad at communication, and tend to have this issue of not being able to spit it out. I also left a lot of context out. This family get-together was really the whole family, like he met my brothers, sisters, in-laws, nieces, and nephews. He also got everyone's number. Yes, he's connected with basically my entire family now. My wife and I have never been bitter or spiteful with one another. We don't argue or press ultimatums, but she has the same issue I do of not being able to just spit it out. A lot of people pondered if she wanted to set T up with our daughter. I just directly asked her and the answer, yes. I asked her and she said she was because our daughter. Well, look, my daughter, 24F, who we will call B, is an incel. Like a really bad incel. Our son, 22 meters, often calls her that, and when I looked up what it means, it fits her very well. B's never had a boyfriend, is still a virgin, and takes all her anger out on the opposite sex for her own personal failings. She is intelligent, but purely in terms of book smarts. She has the emotional and social intelligence of a dead fish. She's working on her master's degree in information technology with emphasis in networking and currently has A+, Net+, Sec+, and CCNA, and she's also working on CCNE. When I found out that my wife was playing matchmaker, it made me feel a lot better. T's job in the army is essentially a network engineer, and he's set to become even deeper in it as he becomes a mister. but something did still feel off to me. As excited as my daughter was at the prospect of finally not being a self-pitying incel and actually finding a man to love, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. What better place than the source? I just called T and asked him if he'd meet me up for lunch to talk, and that he did. He agreed to meet up with me and we just chatted. Guy's a goddamn motor mouth, and keeping him on topic kind of felt like I was yanking the leash of a hyperactive dog. When I did manage to get him on topic of relationships, he said he's been cheated on multiple times. Checks out as he is Army and was deployed to 2 combat zones. One such story that really made him sad was he was in Afghanistan back in 2019 and his girlfriend broke up with him by sending him 3 sex tapes she made with other men. He seemed really upset telling that story. Fair enough. That sounds borderline traumatizing an event. But then came when I asked him if he wanted to be with my daughter, and do you know what this bastard said? Nah, I want to fuck your son. My chest sank. I have never felt so goddamn flabbergasted in my life. He then explained that since he's been cheated on by women his entire Army career, he wanted to give men a try and found my son to be pretty cute. Question: what the hell is a father supposed to do hearing that said about his son? I get it, you're pushing 50, man. You should know. Well, I don't. And I don't even feel like I'm almost 50. I still feel like I have the maturity and intellect of a goddamn 16-year-old. What do you mean it's not 1991 anymore? Anyways, after being absolutely baffled and feeling like my life is some fucked up comedy, I said my goodbyes and now realized both my wife and I are morons. I thought she was planning to cheat on me, but she was playing matchmaker for our bitch incel daughter. My wife thought she was playing matchmaker for our daughter, but T really wanted to court my goddamn son. I hate it all. I truly hate everything right now. Is this a happy ending? Because it doesn't feel like one, and I wish I truly had the wisdom and intellect a man pushing 50 should have, but I just don't. Second story. Am I wrong for blaming the destruction of our family and divorce on her affair? According to her, it was only a symptom. Even 2 years since my divorce, it still drives me crazy how her affair turned into a referendum of our marriage. It was as if she used the marriage as a justification of why the affair happened. Is this valid? Am I wrong to assume that saying I love you more to her, complimenting her more, which I did, maybe not every day in a 10-year marriage, wouldn't have made a difference and it would have happened regardless? In her own words, there was an inexplicable connection between them. Her IC and even our marriage counselor seemed to take her side. It did really well to ease the guilt she had. At first she felt so shameful and guilty, but after IC, she began meeting with family and friends explaining how it happened and how the divorce had nothing to do with it. PPL, who originally were so angry with her, then came to her side. I know it doesn't matter anymore, but drives me nuts. I always read to never blame yourself for your spouse's affair, but therapy has RLY made me think I was responsible. Maybe I am. Maybe this case is different. IDK. Now it's so easy for her. She just tells family and friends we got divorced BC the marriage was difficult, and doesn't mention the affair. When to me, it was 100% the affair that destroyed the marriage. It messed me up badly. I couldn't recover, and it broke up the family. We had 3 young kids. But maybe she's right and I'm in the wrong. I just keep going in this loop, replaying all the damaging things that were done and said in therapy by her and the therapists. It was far from a perfect marriage, but it was a marriage, and before this she would never have dreamed of divorce. Always said how she loved me and always would. But this obsession connection she had with this pig unraveled whatever we had and couldn't go back. How was I able to go back when she was in love with someone else? The damage was irreparable. Still makes me sick. She felt so guilty that it seems like to move on she had to pass the guilt on to me and something else, the marriage. Sometimes I make good points. Her truth changed after the affair. She never would have called it a dead marriage prior. Not even a bad one. just one where there are issues. I think many marriages have similar issues. After falling hard for someone else, and me unable to move on, it turned into, well, it was dead broken before anyway. But it drives me crazy how she could omit the most destructive thing someone could do in a marriage when telling her side. After going through mental and emotional pain that was so destructive I can't even describe it, and now in the aftermath having my life turned upside down, she gets away with it. Wasn't a good marriage and I was so happy. An affair is one of the most destructive things someone could do in a marriage. I'm not just telling a story. As someone who was betrayed, and hearing from many others, the emotional and mental toll it takes on you is dangerous. Depression, anxiety, paranoia, obsessive thoughts, inability to get sleep, it could wreck you. I have heard very few stories of PPL thriving following infidelity. I'm sure it happens, but I would venture to say many don't make it, and the ones that stay are definitely not thriving. I tried forgiving her when we were in therapy. She doesn't need to be married to me. But the reason for the resentment towards her was solely due to the cheating, hence the affair destroyed the marriage. It's fine. She could say in therapy that she wants to be married. But after emotionally attaching herself to someone else and it wrecking me, it just wasn't a reality anymore. Appreciate your input. Wishing you the best. I feel like after an affair, any marriage could be dissected into looking like a terrible marriage with a lot wrong, and then branding the affair as a symptom. There's no such thing as a perfect marriage. The issues just get magnified after an event like an affair, and now trying to figure out what was wrong in the marriage to cause it. Could always blame on money, in-laws, not feeling loved, etc., etc. My 2 cents, which could obviously be way off. A lot of people I disagree with. I guess each situation is different. But to answer your questions, if you'd ask family friends, no one would say we seemed unhappy. Were there stresses? Of course. Welcome to life and marriage. But I had asked some friend and they all were taken by surprise. I have personally heard from PPL who were in healthy marriages that cheated. It's easier to look back and blame the marriage as a way to justify the cheating, or as you say, it's no one's fault. But that seems like a convenient way of saying this couldn't have happened had I been happier, felt more loved, etc., which there is no way of knowing. But it definitely makes the cheater feel better. Were things perfect? Far from it. Did we see eye to eye on everything? No. But none of that really matters in my eyes. When you marry and have a family, you don't jump in and move on when something better comes along. This wasn't something she had been planning on leaving for a while by any means. After the affair she made it clear she wanted things to work out. I do have a lot of anger towards her as she destroyed me mentally and emotionally, and there has been tremendous damage from the affair. There's only so much lying and gaslighting one could handle before the feelings of resentment seep in. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But again, each situation is different. Especially when I'm coming from a betrayed POV, and you had moved on to another relationship before your marriage was over. I'm hearing this a lot, how people treat you is their karma, how you react is yours, that she had left years before and I probably didn't realize. But that was never the case. We had even just recently had our third child, growing the family, moved states and bought a new house. She definitely wasn't checked out and feeling single. And again, could I have been a better husband? For sure. But there is such a fine line between that and saying, oh well, someone else was showing her attention so she naturally jumped on that, regardless that he was married with children as well. This isn't like cheating on a diet BC, it feels good, it's something incredibly destructive and immoral. I have so many regrets. Hate how I pathetically tried to keep fighting for the marriage. Even after I was destroyed from the affair and she wanted out. Should have kicked her out right away. Rant over. Third story. My wife asked for a girl trip. I'm starting to worry. Well, where to start? We've been married for around 20 years, together for almost 25 years. We have a 19-year-old son in his last year of college. We're in the UK. We've been experiencing a diminishing love life for the past several years. Then the past few months she's been overly affectionate towards me, planning date nights, when she would have normally called them off at the last minute. Even getting them set up in the first place was like pulling teeth. She always had numerous excuses as to why we couldn't keep the date. Going back to the last few months, she's been practically throwing herself at me, which is something she hasn't really done since a few years after the birth of our son. She has been for all intents and purposes love bombing me one minute and practically ignoring my texts and calls the next, only replying when I complain about her ignoring me. She's been all over me in the bedroom, a lot more than usual. Then this morning as I was preparing Sunday dinner, she asked me to sit down so we could talk for a few minutes. One of those phrases that I've read on here that normally doesn't end well. So we sit down, and she asks me if I'd be okay with her going on a girls' trip out to Louisiana, USA to visit a couple of friends. Now we haven't been out of the country since we got together, and a holiday abroad was something I've suggested multiple times before, all of which she shot down straight away. I asked her who the friends were she was thinking of going to see. Her body language instantly got my spider senses tingling as she stuttered to provide names, before eventually stating that I didn't know them. I then proceeded to ask her who the friends she would be traveling with were. Again she sort of stammered and fidgeted uncomfortably in her seat, before stating that they were old school friends. Now she's told me repeatedly that she never got on with many people at school, as she was kind of a loner. So I can't understand why she would suddenly be eager to go on a trip with school friends. When I said I'd need further information before agreeing to anything, as I'd be the one likely covering the cost of this trip for her along with contact information of the friends she'd be going with and going to see. She looked like she was about to blow a fuse. I could see the emotions swirling behind her eyes as if she was trying to come up with an answer. But she kept her composure and snapped back to forget it. In addition to this, I've also noticed she's started placing her phone face down, and it rarely leaves her side. I did, however, manage to get hold of her phone when she was in the shower earlier and had a quick look through, and whilst I didn't find anything, her phone looked a little too clean, if that makes any sense. She's never been one to delete text messages, call logs or emails. I'd often have to remind her to clean up her email inbox on a regular basis. She's received numerous phone calls from a couple of phone numbers that aren't stored in her phone, and she quickly cancels the incoming calls when she knows I'm around, and I've noticed she's turned off the call diversion to her voicemail as well. In addition to all of the above, she's been hinting at wanting another child, specifically a daughter, before she reaches menopause. We're both in our mid-40s, and that if we're going to try, it has to be soon before it gets too late. Again, she's been adamant that she didn't want any more children, often stating that it was difficult enough raising one child, to which I've agreed consistently. So I guess my real question is, do you guys and gals think my wife could either be cheating on me or looking to cheat? Sorry if I've been rambling, but I'm trying to juggle a lot of things at the minute, and now this seemingly out of nowhere. Hadn't thought of that she could cheating, especially since she got pregnant with our son when she switched birth control. Something she's been on about for a couple of months, and she mentioned going to see the GP about it, but hasn't mentioned anything further since that I can recall. I should mention the phone bill and asked her for the login details so I could pay the bill this morning, and she stated it wasn't necessary as she'd just paid it. I tried the password we had wrote down and it's no longer valid.